Got it.
There you go. Open the gates.
The gates are open. The count's already going up.
Oh my gosh.
right.
That's awesome.
Oh my God. Okay.
You're okay, Chang?
They can, so they can hear us. We can't hear them. So welcome, attendees. This is the PhillyCHI webinar. We're going to be letting folks in for a little bit. It's probably going to, what is it? It's 6:28 now, so it's going to take a while for everyone to catch in before we start. So we'll probably start a minute or two after the hour. But it's great having you all here. We do have a large collection of folks that you can see on video. These are all members of PhillyCHI or their panelists from the session today. When we get down to the panel discussion, we'll probably cut back on the number of people whose videos you see so you know who you're talking to.
So as Phil mentioned, we're gonna wait until like, I think it's 5 minutes around that to wait to everyone just got in. While we're waiting, why not you guys, for who's signing around, like around the world or outside from Philadelphia, can you drop their where you come from and in the chat channel that we can say hi to everyone? Hi, Ethan from Philly.
Wow, I'm looking at the attendee list. There's a bunch of people here that I know. I see someone I know from Australia. So it's 6:30 now. If you're just joining, we're going to be getting started in a little bit. We're just waiting for folks to roll in. It takes a little bit of time for this webinar platform to get everyone in. You're seeing members of PhillyCHI as well as members of the panel discussion. And we'll get to introductions and things in a little bit.
Jennifer Clark and the other guy are two people that like the area of Vanguard that I want to be in because that's more like UX focused.
Hi, Jason from California. Hi. How's it going over there? I think it's the weather over there is better than here. Hi, Dylan from Toronto.
All right, Chris, all the way from California.
Central New Jersey, Lisa, hi. Hi, Kelly from New Jersey too, Hoboken. Hi, Mike from Sydney, Australia.
Mike is a former thinker from Think Company.
Wow, that's nice.
He left us to live down under. And Mike and his wife just had a child a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
Oh yeah, congrats, Mike.
Congrats.
And Brian Borowski from Melbourne. I know Brian.
Hi, Stephen. Hi, coworker, Stephen. Steve, Frankfurt. Hi, coworker. How you doing?
It looks like the participant count's kind of settled down if you want to get started, Sean.
Okay, got it. So we have Marta from Ghana. That's awesome. All right, let's get it started. Well, thank you everyone for the hello. This is Chang, Chair of PhillyCHI 2020. Hello from Philadelphia. We are really excited for this event because this is our first event ever we do is online. It's been 15 years we're doing this, and this is the first time. So for a first event, so you want to be a successful UX practitioner, tonight we'll be really listening to amazing panel from Philadelphia. Designer leaders who are going to talk about trends, insights, and tips for you to help you to drive as a UX professionals and practitioner in 2020 and beyond. So this is again, it's the first time we're doing this. And so thank you for everyone for joining. So not only from Philadelphia, from New Jersey, I see, from Australia, but like from around the world. We receive a lot of interest from you guys, and we can see people in Malaysia, New Zealand, Australia. So that's awesome. Now I want to hand off to my friend Ben, also a PhillyCHI board member. Ben will talk about what a PhillyCHI is and what we represent for. Okay, take it away, Ben.
Great, thanks, John. Hi, everybody. I'm Ben. I'm the brand and content strategist for PhillyCHI. If you don't know, PhillyCHI has been organizing events in Philadelphia for 15 years now. We're the local chapter of ACM SIG-CHI. In those 15 years, a lot's changed. The term UX has been popularized, for example. So last year's board started a rebranding effort. And the first aspect of that is a new mission and vision statement for PhillyCHI. And is it possible to get that on the screen share?
I think I shared the screen, but can you see the screen?
Okay, if it's showing, I just can't see it.
No, it's not. It's not showing yet. I don't think you're sharing the screen, Chung.
I'm sorry, I had to share the screen. Okay.
That's okay. So this new mission, which will be up in a second.
Okay, just give me 1 second, guys. Do you see it?
Yep.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, John. So this reflects the goals of our parent organization, ACM SIG-CHI, which is to advance the discipline of UX and human-computer interaction. Or if you say it, computer-human interaction, it's the CHI of our name, by the way, Chi. So this mission reflects that, as well as our chapter's core beliefs, which are that we're dedicated to a culture of knowledge sharing and community building. So we're really excited to roll out updated brand language such as this, as well as some really cool visual design aspects that some team members have been working on for a while. So be sure to follow PhillyCHI on social media to see that as it comes out.
I hope it's okay.
So now I will hand it over to Daryl to go over today's agenda.
Thanks, Ben. Next slide, please, Chung. Thank you so much. Hi, thank you, Ben. Hi, everyone. I'm Daryl Chase, PhillyCHI's secretary, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today from around the world. The schedule for this event is as follows. We are starting off with opening remarks, which are being led by PhillyCHI board members. Next, there'll be a panel introduction and discussion, which will be facilitated by our moderator, Phil Charron. Then our panel discussion will begin. We will then proceed with the Q&A. And lastly, we will announce our raffle winners and wrap things up. What I'd like to do now is go over a few ground rules. Attendees are muted by default, so please use the chat for discussions and Q&A to post your questions. Questions for the panelists.
It's very good for your load fat.
Yeah, good.
If you post a question, we will try to unmute you so that you can ask the question yourself. So be prepared to speak. If you prefer not to speak, start your question with the word anonymous, and Phil will read your question out loud. We have limited time and lots of participants, so please be respectful and considerate to the panelists and one another. If you encounter issues during the webinar, send direct messages to the hosts through the chat feature. Lastly, this event will be recorded and shared online, so please keep this in mind when you are unmuted. I will like to be handing this over to Michelle.
Hi, sorry everybody, I was on mute. Hi, thank you so much, Dara. My name is Michelle Colon. I am the PhillyCHI social media strategist. I want to give a big thank you to Think Company for hosting this event, and also a thank you to Vanguard for sponsoring this event. I will now hand it over to Jennifer, who is the VP of Design from Vanguard, to please tell everybody a bit about what's going on at Vanguard. Do we have Jennifer? Reggie, are you okay to up there?
Oh, it's Are you guys not able to hear me?
There you are.
Yes.
We got you now.
Hearing you now.
I'll start over. I just practiced. So hi, guys. My name is Jen Clark. I'm head of UX and design at Vanguard, and we are located in Malvern, Pennsylvania, and also have a global presence. So I did see some folks chatting from Melbourne, Australia, where we also have a presence. So I'm thrilled to be here, thrilled to be a sponsor. If you don't know a lot about Vanguard, we are changing the way the world invests. And I know as UXers, you probably hear a lot of companies say that they are changing the world that does X, but we really are, and we've been doing that since 1975, when we really disrupted the investment industry, made it a low-cost possibility for people, everyday people, to be able to build financial stability and a financial future. So I come from CXD, which is, you're going to hear from one of my teammates, Reggie, on the panel, who's also in CXD. And at CXD, we are growing, and we have an amazingly talented team of people that have embraced full stack agile development, continuous improvement. Of course, based on our mission, the client truly is in the center of all of our experimentation and learning. It's a really fun place to be. And when we do the roll call later, you'll find out that we are in fact growing and hiring. And so I am definitely open to hearing from you if you're interested. But I don't want to hold us up from hearing from these great panelists, so I'll stop there and just, again, want to thank PhillyCHI for allowing us this opportunity to be a sponsor.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. So before I hand it over, I just also wanted to thank our annual sponsors. That is Think Company, Slalom, Guru, Vanguard, Harrisburg University, Drexel College of Computing and Informatics, and Rosenfeld Media. And with that, I'll pass it over to Christine.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Cuniff, and I am the Vice Chair of PhillyCHI 2020. So as we've been going through our introductions, you've met a few of us already, but we wanted to take a second to formally introduce ourselves so that you might recognize us as we pop up throughout the event, and perhaps later in the year when we start having in-person events as well, potentially. So the PhillyCHI board changes every year, and we are your 2020 board. So we have Chung, who is our chair. I am the vice chair. We have Daryl, who's our secretary, Lorraine, our treasurer, Michelle, our social media strategist, and Ben, our content and brand strategist. Please reach out to us if you're interested in joining the board in 2021. We typically open applications for these roles near the end of the year, but we're happy to answer questions anytime. If you'd like to get involved before then, please reach out to learn more about volunteer opportunities with us. And as a reminder, we are a local chapter. I know we have a lot of international people joining, so we are looking for Philadelphia-based inquiries. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our future events, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at PhillyCHI_UX and Twitter at PhillyCHI.com, or, PhillyCHI. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we also want to remind everyone that our code of conduct applies to all of our in-person and virtual events. We are committed to creating a safe and positive environment for professionals to gather, converse, and explore interests in UX design. If you witness any unacceptable behavior, please notify a board member by messaging us in the chat tonight or feel free to contact us at PhillyCHI@gmail.com. So I'm going to hand it off to Lorraine.
Hey everyone, as mentioned, my name is Lorraine and I'm the treasurer of PhillyCHI. Just wanted to go through a couple more things before we hand it over to Phil and get to listen to the panelists. We do have our second virtual event coming up in mid-May. So look out for event details, but the topic is going to be how to lead a 100% remote design team. And we have a couple of great panelists, Sarah and Scott from Abstract, who will be talking in that event. So keep your eyes open for that. And the next thing that we want to talk about and do before we get started is we always do what's called job time at our PhillyCHI events. And we like to use this opportunity to connect job seekers with companies who are hiring. So we wanted to spend a couple of minutes to allow any companies who are hiring to explain what they are looking for. So if you are a company in the Philadelphia region who is looking for UX individuals, please raise your hand so that Phil can unmute you and so that you can share a little bit about the role. Also, you have the option to post, a job description if you have it into the chat channel as well. Yeah, so is there anyone in the Philadelphia area who would like to share about a role that you have open?
Kathleen, why don't you start?
Yes, hello. Yeah, so we are looking, starting to recruit for some roles about mid-year. They're going to be open. There's 3 UX lead roles. So folks who are a little bit more senior can operate independently, work with product teams, are great collaborators, great storytellers. Look me up. We're definitely hiring at Elsevier, right down in Philly. Great location, fun place to be.
Awesome. I think I may have heard Jennifer speaking up, or was someone else in the panel speaking up?
Yeah, that was me. So I was just dropping this in the chat for everybody, but because we're full stacked agile teams and we're growing at a pretty rapid pace, we're pretty much hiring for everything. So that includes product managers, or as we refer to them, journey owners, senior UX researchers, UX designers, UX strategists, content strategists. We're also, of course, looking for developers in iOS and Android, and some front-end developers as well. So we're literally hiring just about everything, also including data analysts. Team is growing at a pretty rapid pace, and we have a presence in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have a small presence in Philadelphia at the Innovation Studio, and our main presence in Malvern, Pennsylvania. We're also learning quite a bit about working remote, and so hopefully there'll be some flexibility that comes out of that as well. I should mention our whole team right now is completely remote.
Yeah, I should throw in there too. I'm forgetting about my team in Frankfurt. We're actually hiring a user researcher and a designer in Frankfurt in Germany too. So I know we have some international folks. So I can share those postings with you. And it's in the healthcare, because Elsevier is a very large corporation, does lots of different things, but it's specifically in healthcare products, helping nurses and doctors and students, nursing students. So it's very apropos for our current situation right now. It's a great industry to be in. I feel like we're really helping out. We did a free website for the COVID-19 research, and we made a lot of our products available for doing research for free. And so that's kind of an interesting tidbit that you can find.
Great. I'm looking at the attendee list. I don't think anyone's raised their hand. I don't know if they found their hand raising feature or not, but we don't have any raised hands. But if there is anyone out there who's a hiring manager who's looking to hire people, you should definitely post a similar description in chat, and we'll make sure that you all that you get a little shout out over there. So I think that's good for job time.
Yeah, and last but not least, stay tuned at the end of this event for the chance to win one of the 3 Rosenfeld books here. Winners will be announced at the end, and we will reach out to you to collect your address so we can ship a physical copy of the book. So I think that's all from the PhillyCHI board. Phil, we'd like to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, PhillyCHI board members, for that introduction. We didn't lose anyone. We're up to 100 attendees exactly, which is really kind of strange. So I got a few notes that I'm going to go through, just do a quick introduction to this session. For those of you who attended a similarly titled session last year, this is really to help folks understand what different types of organizations are looking for when they're looking for talent to hire within their organizations, or they're looking for people to partner with in different situations. So we know that the industry is changing, especially in the past 6 weeks. We're going to actually address that in a couple of minutes. But just to give some broad understanding of what we're talking about when we talk about design in this session, when I'm using the term experience design or UX, I'm using it in its broadest sense, with an understanding that there are many specializations out there and peripheral skill sets that are contained within these titles. So the panelists may differ, and I'm sure they will speak up when they're using their own terminology. But from my perspective, when I talk about design, I'm talking about any kind of skills from UI, interaction design, visual design, design research, content strategy, all the way through to probably higher level sort of consultative design skills like working in design operations or design systems or service design or customer experience or something like that. It's not always easy to break into this industry. I've learned through the years of working with organizations like PhillyCHI that you know there are a lot of people who are really trying to get into this for a career, either making a career change or just entering the workforce, for the first time. But it's also, I think, sometimes difficult for people to continue to expand their career and look into their options. And so this discussion here is really about that. People who are looking to grow their careers and build their skill sets, and what kind of advice that hiring managers or partners can offer them out there, or people who have been experienced in that realm. And that's really what the purpose of this session is about. So the intent of this is to give UX practitioners at every stage in your career look at where the industry is going, what kind of competencies you should focus on, just so you don't fall behind. So I'm going to hand it over to our panelists to do a quick introduction of themselves. I don't want to speak for them, and then we're going to get to a couple of discussion questions that we've prepared. So I think the first person I'll hand it over to is Reggie, if you want to go first.
All right, thank you, Phil, and thank you everyone for joining around in the Philly area, the United States, and all across the world. We really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to join this awesome panel. I'm Reggie Murphy. I lead the user experience research team inside of CXD, which means client experience in digital, inside of Vanguard. And I lead a team of researchers who who are embedded in these agile teams that Jen Clark mentioned. And these teams cover everything from rolling over your 401k all the way to security, authentication, as well as work on our trading platform. So they cover a broad spectrum of workflows across the Vanguard enterprise. And I've been building this user experience research team for the past couple of years, which is how long I've been at Vanguard. And I'm just happy to be on this panel, happy to share.
Great. Thanks, Reggie. Let's hand it over to Kathleen next.
Hello, I am Vice President of User Experience Design at Elsevier in the health and commercial markets. And I have a team of user researchers, user experience designers, all different types of specialties. It's a new role at Elsevier, so I'm pulling together a lot of design folks who have kind of grown up in different parts of the organization. You know, Elsevier has acquired companies around the country, so I have folks spread around the US, mostly in Philadelphia, and also in Europe, and we're building a team in China and Shanghai specifically. So if we have any folks dialing in from the APAC region, that's where we're looking. It's an exciting opportunity. I've been there 4 months now, working on a reorg, doing some more hiring. We're establishing a user experience practice, and I want folks to be more specialized and focus on that. My background is I've worked in agencies and consulting, in-house design agencies also, and I've grown teams and matured them and done a lot of big strategic projects. I hear Vanguard, and I worked quite a bit at Fidelity, so we were strict competitors there. So it's kind of funny. Yeah, so it's great to be in Philly. I am working remote, as many of us are. But when I'm back and working in Philly, I've been really enjoying there. I'm in Boston, is my hometown. So nice to meet everyone.
Great to meet you too, Kathleen. Next, let's hand it over to Dan Mall.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Mall. I'm the founder and CEO of a design collaborative called Superfriendly. And what we do is we help our clients make better products through design systems. So we specialize in all sorts of kinds of systems, whether that's brand systems or component libraries and things like that, or just system-minded way to do work and get work done. Our team is fully distributed. We work all over the globe. And this panel I'm excited for because we all know that UX is changing, design is changing. COVID-19 has accelerated all of that stuff. And so I think I'm eager to kind of talk with the rest of the panelists about what that means for all of us and for all of you.
Great. Thank you, Dan. And finally, Abby dePrimo from Think Company. I know Abby.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Phil. Yes, I'm Abby dePrimo. I'm the Vice President of Design Operations at Think Company. My main focus is really on the overall delivery and execution of our design project work. We're a design consultancy with a pretty large design team. We have over 50 designers at this point, as well as development team and project management. So I'm really making sure that our teams are working well together, working with our clients effectively and producing high quality work.
Excellent. Great. All right. Well, we got through, let's see. I got through the introductions faster than we expected. So it's going to give us more time for the panel discussion. Excellent. So I'm going to just start throwing some questions out to the panel. The first thing I think we'll hit, let's talk to Reggie. Reggie, so let's get to the most pressing thing. Let's get the most pressing thing out of the way first. I think the thing that's on everyone's mind. How have you seen this COVID-19, impact, all the issues around it impact the way people are practicing design, and specifically with your group design research over the past 4 to 6 weeks? How has it changed? What kind of skills do you think are really helping people excel through this change in the way that we're all working?
Thank you for that question, Phil. Yes, this has been on our minds since the country, the world has started to encourage people to stay home to avoid the spread of the virus. And we noticed early on some pushback in our recruiting participants as the virus spread. And we said, wait a second, we do not want to continue upsetting clients. We don't want to upset clients or any prospects by reaching out to them and asking them to participate in research. So we took a pause and stepped back and said, well, we need to now shift to 100% virtual research. And so what that meant was we were already doing a number of, our workflow, I would say maybe half or so of our projects were already virtual anyway. So shifting to 100% virtual work wasn't too much of a stretch. We were concerned about behavior changing, and in our research, the questions, are people behaving in certain ways simply because of the coronavirus situation? And so those are just the issues that we were making sure that we try to sort out as we conduct research. But first of all, we had to shift all the way to 100% remote. And so that meant that we had to make sure that we had all of the different tools and our platforms were secure, and that we had, all of our playbooks put together so everyone could make sure that they were conducting research seamlessly and efficiently. And so when you talk about skill sets, I think, there's a lot of products out there now that help with remote research. Obviously, like the collaboration, the virtual teleconferencing tools like Zoom and GoToMeeting, and all those tools are great. But we use user testing. I know there's UserZoom. There's a couple of other products out there that help with continuous virtual research. And so I think understanding and being able to use those tools, I think would be advantageous for not only UX researchers, but also UX designers and strategists who may also participate in the research process. Also, just your basic fundamental research tool, methods such as quantitative research. Now, I mean, most of that is all online anyway. So those skills are certainly coming into play even more now because of the COVID situation. So what we've been doing at Vanguard is continuing. We've actually, none of our projects have slowed down. As a matter of fact, we've probably increased our volume of work simply because now it's all online. Even we have someone who specializes in that, and we have an ethnographer on our team. And we've shifted her work to all online because, you know, at this point, it's probably conceivable to think that it's going to take some time for people to get comfortable with user experience researchers or any researchers coming inside their home for an ethnographic study, or just coming into a lab and doing a usability study. And so this is going to be the state that we're going to be in for quite some time. I'd take a guess and say that probably for the remainder of the year, or even in 2021, we're going to be probably 100% virtual with our research. And we're just going to have to get comfortable with it and make sure we have the tools and platforms and people in place in order to execute.
Great.
I should also mention, I posted in the chat that I do have research positions open. I think Jen alluded to that, and I posted the links into the chat.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that answer too, Reggie.
Yes.
And I was going to hold asking some of the questions that came up in the Q&A for the end, but one really relevant one that you started to answer, I think you came up with a couple, was, you know, what kind of remote usability testing tools are you using? So I think you mentioned usabilitytesting.com. Obviously, like, you know, video chat, Zoom, things like that.
Usertesting.com.
Oh, I'm sorry, usertesting.com.
Yeah. And there's User Zoom. There may be a couple of others out there.
Yeah. But to pass that same question off to other panelists, I don't know if anybody wants to volunteer to answer this. Like, you know, what kind of skill sets have you seen helping people get through this, and what kind of tools have they been using? I see Kathleen's hand up, so why don't we go to Kathleen first?
Being really resourceful at this point, because, you know, we interview, you know, nursing students, and the schools were all dismissed. You know, people are not attending college right now. So it was disruptive quite a bit for a while there until we got everything in place, because of course we did remote testing before, but not as much. And we didn't have all the tools in place. But it's funny because I was sitting here, you know, feeling badly about it, like the things that were delayed and how we were trying to get things up and going again. And we find, you know, we hit our stride again well now. But I had a conversation with the designer that we have in Beijing, and throughout the whole shutdown in China, with how difficult it would be, he was interviewing doctors. And I was amazed. I had to ask him, like, how are you doing this? What, you know, how are you getting people? And he said, any time of the day or night, I would do one-on-one remote interviews with doctors. And they were basically probably the folks not on the front lines, of course, but they would make themselves available if he would do it, you know, according to their schedule. So I think being resourceful is the key. You know, don't think you're going to have these very formal group sessions or have everyone lined up one after the other. You got to work with folks right now. Everyone's schedules are really upset, and so you have to be flexible.
That's great advice. I think that's just great advice in general for anyone in the design industry. Like, if there's anything we know, it's that the work you're working on is going to change from moment to moment. So that's you know, resourcefulness is really important. Abby, I saw your hand flash up there for a second.
Yeah, I think to your point, it applies definitely outside of research as well. I mean, something that we often do in our projects is just have those big stakeholder meetings where everybody's in a room and you're whiteboarding and you're working through layouts and, you know, different challenges and solutions. So when all of this happened with COVID-19 and we went remote, we had to really think about, you know, we still need to get these answers to these questions. So how do we do that? And how do we lean on the tools that we have and get our clients on board with that? So I know we were using things like Miro, Zoom, and different, even some Envision freehand, things like that. Anywhere that you can collaborate and still feel like you're in the same place when you're not has been really important for us to keep moving work forward.
That's great. Yeah, it's amazing to see how many tools people have just started pulling out of the, you know, things that we looked at before were like, we'd rather stand around a whiteboard with everyone. And now all of a sudden we're finding out that these tools are making some of that work actually more efficient, which fascinates me that, it's getting people more focused on it. So Dan, you are in you've got an interesting perspective since you sort of run a collective of contractors and freelancers through Superfriendly. And I'm just wondering, like, how have things changed in the business that you've seen going through with this new environment that we're all working in, or is it pretty much the same?
In some ways, some things are exactly the same, and in some ways they're drastically different. And so, one of the things that we saw is just a lot more churn in our pipeline. And they're along the lines that I think you would expect. So we have some clients who are in travel, we have some clients who are in hospitality. That work has either been delayed, deferred, or just stopped altogether, as you would expect in some of those industries. And then across other industries, it has been more accelerated. So we have won and started and done many more things with clients who are in healthcare, or clients who are in entertainment, or clients who really need to be doing the work that they're doing now in a more accelerated fashion. So in that way, it's like we've almost like been net neutral around it.
Yeah.
The thing that has been different is just the speed, the velocity of all of it. It's just a lot more churn. I think that represents like the volatility that all of this is causing, is that people are in a tizzy. They don't know what to do about all of this stuff. To the question about like, what should we do as UX professionals, as designers? I read a really provocative article. I'll drop it in the chat from the folks at Andreessen Horowitz, which is a VC firm. And essentially the article is titled, "It's Time to Build." And it's a call to arms to say, those of us who can build things, and that doesn't necessarily mean writing code. It means making new things. Like what this has exposed is that there are gaps in education, and gaps in healthcare, and gaps in tooling, and gaps in all of these things. And it's kind of a call to arms to say, like, who will be the ones to provide those things for the world? It's people like us, people who can make these things and research them and design them and build them and ship them and test them and all of that stuff. And so that's been our approach to how we can help our clients, how we can help the world, how we can help nonprofits, is like, let's just make things. If all of us are makers here, we might as well put that skill to use.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and that goes back to what Kathleen said, that this notion of versatility and adaptability is just so important, and you see that in every day, like not just in design, but there's a restaurant down the street from me that defiantly would not take reservations or let you take food out of the restaurant or do that kind of stuff, and all of a sudden, like, that's all their business now. Like, they got a phone, which is just it's amazing to see how other organizations are adapting. That's great. Let's move over to let's see, what's the next question I was going to ask. So if we get out of the world of COVID, and I think Kathleen, you addressed this a little bit earlier, but when we're talking about like folks who are continuing to develop their skill sets, like what kinds of competencies do you think are helpful, or what kind of advice would you give someone who, maybe has been working in the industry for a few years and wants to move on to another organization and, is getting a little anxious about an interview or something like that?
Well, I would say that the first thing to really work on, and I'm assuming you've honed your craft, you know your basic skills and you know how to put together a portfolio, but telling a story is the most important thing. I always ask people to tell me what was the biggest struggle that you had on a project. Tell me what you did and how you dealt with it. So if you can tell a good story and have details around it, and be insightful. Don't just tell it like it's a very basic high level story. You want to hear some details. I always used to joke when I get my team together, like, I want to hear the real story. I don't want to hear the status. I want to hear what's really going on, So doing that shows that you have, you can get below the surface, that you understand some of the drivers and things that are going on in the organization. And I think that's, as you move through your career, the biggest thing to learn is that design is about understanding all the bits and pieces. I always see us kind of sitting in the center. So we understand the business aspect, the commercial aspect, basically the technology, and we're bringing in, our superpower is bringing in that voice of the users and the customers. So making that all work, because you're not going to be very effective if you kind of ignore the fact that we need to make money and pay the bills. You know, none of us will be here. I literally had a designer once tell me, while I was at Fidelity, that he didn't like numbers, you know, and that was kind of entertaining. So he like literally refused to learn anything about the business. And that doesn't mean you have to be an expert. You're not going to be a financial planner, but you have to understand what the playing field is that you're playing in. And if you don't have that, you know, basic understanding, how can you fix it? You know, so there's this do your homework aspect to it. Love the problem. Don't think that you have this great idea right from the start and you're going to shove it through. You're listening, be a little humble. There are people that you need to talk to and deal with. Find the smartest person in that company. If let's say you're new and you're starting out, find the smartest person in that company in each of the different specialties that you have to work with and have lunch with them. You know, be that kind of person that they want to have lunch with, you know, so being a little bit humble, being a good listener, being insightful, asking good questions. That's the way to learn. People aren't going to come and teach you. You know, you have to reach out. You have to figure out ways to engage them on their terms too. They're not always going to have hours and hours to sit with you. So you have to, you know, I had one of my best designers I ever hired. He would sit in the lobby in Fidelity and wait for people to come in the morning and just act like he was saying, oh, hi, how you doing? You know, he'd have his laptop open. And I'd always see him grabbing people with their coats still on and asking them, chatting with them. But it was super effective because these were the kind of people that were super hard to get meetings with, but he only wanted a couple minutes with them to ask them a few specific questions. And it was, you know, just little things like that were always like, you always saw him talking to someone and they were always the sharpest, best person in the company. And then that's relationship building too. Many companies now, it's a matrix organization. You don't have dedicated resources and you are almost kind of convincing people that the thing that you're working on is interesting and they should spend their time on it. So that, you know, a data scientist who works on the analytics team may not be assigned full time, but could help you and could get some data that you need for your project. And if he feels like what you're doing is pretty cool and you can inspire him when you tell him the story, he's going to help out. So those kind of skills and it sounds silly and trite, but so many people don't listen. I had an interview with someone the other day that, you know, I couldn't get a word in edgewise to try to explain what we were trying to accomplish and what the problem was. And as soon as I started to talk, he jumped in and cut me off. So right away, I was like, well, if this is how the interview is going, I couldn't even imagine him in a room with trying to run a workshop with a bunch of product people. And, you know, so and the last thing, and I'll wrap up, is, you know, that storytelling, being visual to explain things as much as possible. And the ability to run a workshop is amazing. It's not easy to run a good workshop. It's a very difficult thing to do. And having those kind of skills and being able to talk about it, volunteer if you can. If you don't have an opportunity to do it your job now, volunteer to run workshops, design jams, you know, anything, get involved in them and kind of learn what are those techniques to get people engaged and how to do that.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to hand this over to Dan in a second, because I think this sort of bridges over to the question that I had asked Dan to prepare to answer. I think, like, you know, more and more when I talk to folks in the industry who are making hiring decisions or partnership decisions like Dan does, you know, we're looking more for the soft skills, because we can look at your portfolio and figure out if you've got a handle on the hard skills. So I'm just curious, Dan, like when you're thinking about partners over at Superfriendly that you'd be bringing in to work on opportunities, like what does your vetting process look like, and how are you considering, you know, the full range of skills that someone has, kind of like what Kathleen was talking about?
Yeah, so first thing is Karen McGrain had a great tweet. I know she's spoken for PhillyCHI a few times before. She's in Philly also. She has a great tweet about campaigning to change the phrase soft skills, right? Because it's disingenuous to what it actually is. So what she's campaigning for is either we rebrand it to power skills or foundational skills. And I'm like, that is a much better framing on what those, on what it is, right? It's like soft skills make it seem like, oh, you don't have to have those. Those are things around the core set. No, that is the core set of what we're looking for in professionals. So that's the thing, is like, what are the power skills that people have? What are the foundational skills? And for me, that my framework in evaluating and hiring is, whether or not they have those power skills and foundational skills, that's kind of the yes or no thing. And what I look for is two things in particular. The first is open-mindedness, and the second is curiosity. Somebody who is very open-minded and very curious, I'll work with them any day. It doesn't matter what their skill set is, like, because that can always grow. If they are closed-minded and not curious, that's like a recipe for a really terrible person to work with. It's going to be so difficult to work with that person. They don't, like what Kathleen was just saying, like, they don't listen to you. They don't give you room. They have their own opinions. They're not going to grow. They don't care about what you say. Like, that describes all of the really poor coworkers I've ever had, or poor partners I've ever had. So, but somebody who's open-minded and curious, that to me is kind of the yes, no decision. If they're open-minded and curious enough, it's like, cool, you're in. And then the next decision is about the hard skills, is like, okay, now where do we put you? So how much do they know about development or research or UX or graphic design or UI design? And that'll determine, okay, do we need to pair you with somebody? Is there a gap between what you currently know and what we expect you to be able to do? If so, okay, we can help close that gap if it's not too far. If it is far, well, maybe that's a mentorship program or an apprenticeship program or an internship program. So that's kind of my framework is, if they're open-minded and curious enough, cool, you're in. And then the next part is like, okay, so now where do we put you? What teams do we put you on? Who do we pair you with? Are you a lead or are you a junior? Or what's your growth path look like? That's kind of the way that I evaluate where to place partners and where they can be helpful and valuable, where they can help Superfriendly grow, and also where Superfriendly can help them grow.
I love everything you said, and I love the this idea of calling them foundational skills, because I think far too often we think about, the first part of your career development, you're developing your hard skills and the soft skill side of it, but it really is those soft skills that I think everyone's, or I'm sorry, I keep using the wrong term. It's those foundational skills. It's the initial things that we're looking for when we're evaluating people that we want to work with, regardless of what the situation is. Oh, I got frozen again. Ah. Oh, my unstable audio connection.
Maybe
well, hopefully some of that made it through. Right. I'm gonna try to do that. Let me hide my video, and that might help with my bandwidth issues. Oh, it already did. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to hand it off to Reggie. Just in the world of research, how would you react to what Kathleen and Dan have had to say?
With regards to which particular part?
To like the just sort of like the skill set that you're looking for when you're looking to hire folks.
So I look at UX research as a very specialized role, and so I am for folks that we hire, I look at the blocking and tackling parts of the user experience research. Are you able to conduct a one-on-one interview without technology? Are you able to sit down and conduct an interview with someone, and are you able to design a discussion guide in order to facilitate that interview? That's on the qual side of things. On the quant side of things, we look at, can you design and execute a research study? Those are an online research study, or online survey is what I mean. Those are sort of the fundamental skill set for a UX researcher. There's also other methodologies like card sorting, diary. So if you look at qual and quant methodologies, what we try to do is we try to look at folks who are sort of mixed methods and can come in with some expertise in a couple of these methodologies and proficiency in some of the others. No one is going to know everything about all the methodologies out there, but what we try to do is if you're coming at a senior level, obviously you're going to have a little bit more of experience with them. But I would say for those who are entering in this field or who are trying to grow and move to the next level, it's the blocking and tackling kinds of methodologies that are super important in terms of skill. What can you actually do day one coming in? Now, the second piece is, for me, is I think a couple of people mentioned this, is the communication piece, being able to come in and articulate a point of view, being able to come in and conduct research and be able to craft a readout to all of your stakeholders so that they understand and able to distill information and be able to read out and communicate insights so that the developers can understand it. And so it goes from insights all the way to, okay, what is somebody actually going to build as a result of the insights that you gained from the field? So communication is a really important piece. And the third piece, so that was execution talked about, and the third communication. The third piece is UX researchers have a consultative role inside of the product teams that we have at Vanguard. I'm sure some of you who are at more consulting firms, you understand this. And so a researcher must be able to come in and work with all of their stakeholders and sort of be the expert in the room when it comes down to talking about why are we going to execute we're going to deploy one research method versus another. Being able to talk through that and share the rationale so that people get behind it and understand, okay, yeah, we're going to need to go out into the field and do an extensive foundational research design for this particular problem because that's what it takes. Or for this other problem, we need a random sample, 2,500 people in an online research study, a survey. That's what it takes. And here are the reasons why we're going to answer the question this way. So having some of that acumen really is going to help you inside of, I think, any company, any consulting company, as well as in-house research as in Vanguard, because it's going to help you be able to to be able to influence your stakeholders that are around you in order to get stuff done. Hope that helps.
Yeah, it's very helpful. So Abby, I haven't been ignoring you. But just if you want to react to some of the responses that we had and maybe talk about, what you're looking for in terms of both generalists and specialists, because I think that's and there's some questions that are coming up in Q&A also that are sort of like floating around that kind of area. Like, if someone's trying to develop their career, like what are your thoughts on what direction people should go?
Yeah, so I mean, the generalist versus specialist question, I think, is an ongoing one. People have a lot of opinions on it. Ultimately, I think that there's no one answer to it. I think the answer changes depending on where you are in your career. And there's a need for both in different scenarios. So someone who's more junior in your career, I think it's more natural that you would be more of a generalist because you really do need to soak up education and experience along the entire design process so that you're understanding the constraints that you're working within and can have empathy for the people that you're working alongside in the future. As you progress along, you're going to naturally be more inclined to focus on different areas, whether that's research or content or UX, UI, visual design. So you draw towards those different areas. But if you're choosing to specialize in that, there's a trade-off to that. I mean, time is a constraint, so you can only spend so much time on sharpening your skill set in one area, trading off in those other areas. So I actually listened to someone speak at a conference, Jason Mezet, I believe is his name. He talked about blob-shaped designers. People talk about T-shaped a lot, but his theory is that there's that whole design spectrum and it changes over time what you are focusing on. So the shape of who you are is uneven and it's a varied shape and it's going to change as you progress in your career. And I think that ultimately our teams need that diversity in skill sets to be strong because you then have people who are very specialized in one area working with others who are specialized in that other area. And that's how we can not only staff our teams, but also hire for them.
Wow. Blob-shaped designers.
Yeah, you should look it up. It's all see if I can post the article. It's great.
I like that because like we have used the term that T-shaped designer term for so long that but I understand that we're just like all kind of evolving and in different ways. So
I want to throw my opinion about journalists and specialists in just for a couple of minutes.
Please, yeah.
I land on the side of specialists for UX researchers in particular. And the reason I say that is if you want to be a UX researcher, there's quite a few things that you got to build into your portfolio of skills. And I've seen some successful designers sort of evolve into researchers, and I've seen vice versa. And I know some companies hire, I think some of the titles are experienced designers or experienced strategists, where they may wear a couple of hats, including conducting research. I totally get that. When you come inside a company like Vanguard, I think what we're now starting to see is some benefit and value in people specializing in certain areas like data science, content strategy, design, and research, because now you're on a team with 3 or 4 other people, and you're tackling a problem at 3 or 4 different ways. And I think when you're a specialist in your function, you're able to bring that lens and bring that information to the conversation. And so I would say if you're going down the UX researcher road, go down that road and double down on it and become awesome at it, so that you can present yourself and your work to a company and say, look, I'm an expert in XYZ 1, 2, 3 as a UX researcher. Yeah, I can play with pixels. I'm good in Adobe, and I have some design skills, but you hire me as a UX researcher and I can be awesome and help you win there. I think that's a much more selling point than I could do all things, but you may not be able to do that particular thing that the company needs very well. Yeah. And that isn't a very good selling point in my view.
Is that something similar to what's going on over at Elsevier, Kathleen?
Yeah, absolutely. When I joined the group, there had previously been this idea of hiring more generalists. And, I think there's a time and a place when you have to be a generalist. Like if you're in a small startup and you just simply don't have the money to hire a lot of different resources, or you find yourself just in a pinch for budget reasons on a project, and it's a very simple test that you need to run. But the important thing is that you need to have a research practice with experts who can build the best practices, can help. So if you do have a designer who's maybe not an expert researcher and is in a pinch and has to run a test, they can get it, they can get some help and some advice to set up the test plan. And, maybe even someone could help out part-time to do the moderating, whatever is necessary. But it's a very different specialty. And in my experience, people who are really, really good user researchers usually don't want them designing. I like that separation a little bit. Now they can collaborate, they work with the designer very closely, but it's often that they're not the person that you want kind of solving the problem. They're very, very good at the insights and what's important and what's key. And they could have ideas, certainly, of course, but then, having someone with a separate, like you said, point of view coming at that same problem. And that pairing of a designer and a researcher is very powerful too. You get much better results, I think, when you have those two skill sets together.
Yeah.
Can I double down on all this too?
Yeah, please.
We might as well complete the set here. I totally agree. It's so much easier for me to hire a specialist than it is a generalist. I prefer generalists, right? Because you get a wider spread. It's just really hard to hire them because not everyone is a good generalist. You have to be a good generalist. So when I interview someone, like if I've determined like they're open-minded, they're curious enough, and then we get to skill set, the thing that I ask them is like, so what are you best in the world at, right? Which is like, that's an intimidating question to ask someone. And because what I'm looking for is, give me a reason to call you above anybody else, right? Give me a reason to say like, oh, I'll work with this person. If somebody says like, oh, I'm a developer, I love doing development. It's like, well, yeah, you and the 1,000 other developers that I know too. So what makes you different? I interviewed a guy a couple of years ago, and I asked him like, what's your thing? What are you best in the world at? And he said, oh, I love writing HTML and CSS. I'm like, sure, but like, what are you like, give me more than that. Give me another hook. And he's like, well, I mean, I like sailing. Like, I really love boats. I take my kids out, and every summer we go on the lake and we sail, and I teach them how to sail. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then a year later, we got an inquiry from a luxury yacht company. And I was like, I know the exact developer to call, right? Because he gave me a hook that was better than everybody. Like he wasn't just a developer. He was a developer who would love to have worked on that because he loved boats. He loved all things nautical. And so, you know, and that's not a skill set specialty, but I think there's something about specialization where if you're, you know, I just did a portfolio review with a student this morning, and on her portfolio, it was like, I'm a UI UX designer. It's like, well, cool. So is everybody else. But if she had said, I'm a UI UX designer for e-commerce, well, that's another level now. Now I can go, all right, well, she specializes at that thing. She doesn't have to be the best in the world at it, but you know, you could be the best in your neighborhood. You could be the best in your city. You know, you could be a best, like you can qualify that however you can. And that gives me like, what you want as a specialist, as a professional, is for people to think of you right away. Oh, yeah. Who do we get for that? You know, for that particular kind of research, that person. Who do we get for that particular kind of design or development? Oh, we should call Brian. Oh, we should call Susie for that thing. Like, so you want to be top of mind, and being a specialist makes you top of mind. Also, just to say it, there's a lot of science out there that backs up the fact that specialists get paid more than generalists. So if that's what you're after too, specialization is a good way to separate yourself and actually make more money.
Yep.
That's great. So now I'm going to transition a little bit into the questions and Q&A, because I think there's a good bridge over into that. Is what are those specialties then? You know, we've established research, Reggie, but then even within research, you've got hyper specialists over at Vanguard. You've got an ethnographer, right? So, so like if there are folks that are attending this panel right now and listening in, like, what kind of specialties would you recommend that they kind of pursue? Like, you know, which different kinds of specialties you think they should pursue? I don't know if anybody wants to take that first.
I mean, I think in the world of UX research, I think ethnography is a great road to travel on. I think just being a really good qual researcher really could be very valuable to you. And on the other side, being a very good quant researcher, that's something that I'm really interested in. If someone who has a background in statistics, modeling, A/B testing, max diff, conjoint, if those things get you excited, I'd love to talk to you, because we are sort of looking for somebody who may specialize in that area. Ideally, though, I like mixed methods researchers, people who could be an expert in qual, but really proficient in quant. So they can also design a survey without a whole lot of hand-holding. So I think it really is it really depends on your own personal passion when you come out of graduate school, or if you've gone into a certificate program or whatever you have done to upgrade your skill set. You just sort of think about what you're most passionate about. But I believe as a company like Vanguard, we are interested in someone who, say, can really step in on day one, having a firm grasp of a couple of different methodologies, from usability, whether it's usability testing, and I can really jam on some quantitative research. And if that's what you have, then we'll figure out your level, and then we'll see if you're a match, and then I think you'll have a spot. And let's just start there, and then you continue to grow your expertise throughout your career.
Yeah. So Abby, on the I sometimes I feel like there's more of a need when you're a consulting company or an agency. Although Dan made a good argument that maybe there isn't, but that there's sometimes more of a need for generals. But how do you see people specializing? Like, what kind of skill set or skill areas do you see people gravitating towards over at Think Company?
Yeah, I mean, I think we look at some of like the larger disciplines. I mean, we have design systems as a whole, content strategy as a discipline. I think I don't know if I would necessarily call it a specialization, because those are such large areas of focus. I do think just the nature of our work, we don't have as many specialists as some of the more product focused companies. But to that point, I do think that having that lens of product design is something that we see developing and more important in the work that we're doing. So really kind of taking the lens of all those different disciplines and rolling it up into, like, how can we think about solving these problems from an organizational level and apply it in design development environment.
Great, yeah. And Kathleen, what kind of I guess like titles or specialties are you seeing coming up over at Elsevier?
Yeah. So, interaction design, of course, is really important. Content is also something that I think is missing in a lot of companies, people who are specialists in writing content. And I mean, not, I mean, UX content, something that is focused on making things easier, more clear, communicates the branding. That's an interesting area to get into. And especially for folks that may not even have joined this call, they may not even realize that this is a specialty if they're more of a writer. Also, just really good user researchers. Reggie's covered that really well. Who do have that, they know what type of research to use when, and they can explain it very clearly. Because the thing we're trying to get people to do is trust us. So if you are a product owner and you know this area, this subject area inside and out, and you're going to trust someone to come in and talk to your customers and your users, you want to make sure that you're getting someone who's a professional, knows how to do this well. And, from my perspective, the company's making huge decisions on these insights. And if you're not someone that knows how to gather them and analyze them properly, it makes me a little nervous. I want to hear why this is not a good type of test to do and why we should be doing this one, and feel good about the quality of what was done and what's coming out of it, because nothing is worse than a, poorly done research study that leads to bad conclusions and then leads to bad products. So, I'm just really focused on that right now. But, that's a couple areas to definitely think about. And then again, that whole, there's many different titles: service designer, design strategist, there are lots of titles, but you're someone who can gather and help orchestrate a large group of people with many different backgrounds and many different levels. And you can kind of, you're that professional facilitator who can keep them together and keep the room going and get some good content out, get some good feedback from these folks. It's not always easy to do, especially when you get higher level people.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see. I'm just looking through the questions here. I feel like Dave Cooksey was asking these questions around, what skill sets are we looking for in different areas and things like that. And I think we've covered that. So I think I'll go to the next, although that question was upvoted by 15 people. So I thought I would throw it out there and have us talk a little about those skill sets just to get that. But maybe we go to the next question by Robin. I'm going to try unmuting you, Robin, if I can find you in the list here of 107 people. Oh, it looks like she may not be in. She's not in the list of attendees anymore. So I guess I will ask her question, or I'm just having trouble getting to her to unmute her. So her question is, how has the field changed in the past couple of years? Has the focus shifted to, for example, design systems versus design operations? Is there more buy-in on user research? Is there a lot of buy-in from traditional fields like healthcare and education, and remote teams? So that's a very broad question, and I don't know if you have access to the Q&A, to the Q&A tool to look at that for our panelists. But what direction do you see the industry shifting in the past couple of years when it comes to just like generally the kind of work we're doing? I'm going to throw it over to Dan first, because Dan, I think Superfriendly specializes in design systems primarily. So I thought you could talk a little bit about that and your journey there.
So certainly we are seeing a lot of clients want design systems more and more. That's why we specialize in them, because there's certainly a market need for it. So that's not to say that, clients only want design systems now. They don't want anything else. It's not an exclusive thing. It's that we knew that we could service that thing specifically with our expertise and the interest of our teams and all that kind of stuff. So design systems is a big thing. And I think generally, broadly, what we're seeing is it's a time now where, versus 20 years ago, organizations were like, we need our first website, right? Like that's the kind of inquiries that we were getting. And now it's like, we have an intranet and 12 microsites and a corporate website and these mobile apps, and we have this other initiative going on and an Android app, and we have no idea why we have any of those and why we even need them and what do we do with them. So design systems, design ops, all of that kind of area is to help organizations make sense of like, what do we do with all of these things? Because they all kind of sprung up organically, and one by one, this department did this and that department did that. And then this new executive wanted this pet project. And all of a sudden, someone there has to manage 20 digital pieces. And they're like, well, why am I in this position? How do I make sense of it? So part of the reason that we've specialized in it is partly because it's a need on the organizational side. And also because we're good at it. So it seems to be a good match of supply and demand. And that's kind of why we've done that. So that's not to say like, well, we don't see as many people needing AR or VR anymore, or we don't see as many people needing user research. It's not that. I think that organizations generally are struggling with sprawl now. Like we have gotten to a place where digital is a currency, I guess you could say. Digital transformation is a big thing. Organizations need help making sense of that. So all of the factors that contribute to that, operations, systems-minded design and approaches, researching, product design, like all of those map up to, we don't know what we're doing. Can someone help us make sense of this?
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, I'll hand over you to Kathleen in a second, but just to editorialize a little bit, like the interesting thing is there's a huge difference in skill sets or in those, again, in those foundational skills that you're looking for when you're tackling something like a design system problem for an organization that has 4 intranets and 5 mobile apps and 2 products online and things like that, because there's a lot of politics involved with it. There's a lot of systems design and systems engineering and analytical skills and things like that, as opposed to hey, we're going to create a brochureware site for you. So again, that sort of points over to, you've got to start to master those other foundational skills in order to be able to execute on that. Kathleen, I think you started saying something before I rudely interjected.
Singing my tune, Dan. The first thing I recognized was the mess that we didn't have one proper design system. We had fits and starts. We had people trying to do it as a sideline. Absolutely does not work. So I had the luxury of looking across a large team and found an individual that just had a passion for it. He was already trying to do this on his own, so we paired him with a good front-end developer who also had a passion for getting this right and making sure that we were building components that were accessible. And, so that's the plan. Like I said, 4 months in, I've just picked out the person to lead this from a UX perspective, but it's so important. And that person has to be super organized and also a great collaborator, because these design systems will only work as well as you can get everyone on board and contribute. It's a living, breathing being, that goes on, and you have to get people interested and want to collaborate with you. And so it's a bottom up kind of thing. And then I'm also creating a brand strategist, like a more creative director. And I see that as more of a top down kind of activity. So that person has to work with corporate branding and figure out, this is our voice, our tone, our look, this is what we're going to do. And that's a little bit more, you don't have a choice. You kind of have to do that, So, that's, I see those as very different personalities and very different roles. And sometimes I've seen folks try to mush that together and it doesn't always work super well. But it's interesting. And then what do you do with the design system to govern it moving forward? You got to have some kind of structure in place afterwards. So having someone who can really think in a kind of a structural, very organized way, that they're all different kinds of designers and everyone has different skills. And it's fun to, like I said, I had that luxury to kind of look across a lot of great designers and pick out the people who I saw as best talented and had the passion for these different roles. But those are 2 really different and needed skills.
Yeah. Let me know if they ever need any help with that.
Yeah, they might be calling you, Dan. We'll see how this goes over the next year.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
So Abby, like what other directions have you seen the industry going in the past few years since you've been running the show over in the design group at the Think Company?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would really just build on what was said. I think that, with more of a focus on product and, building in design systems, design ops, that's really freeing up designers' mind share to focus on larger complex problems, which is like kind of the meaty stuff that we want to be focused on. And a lot of those problems originate at higher levels in the business organization. So it's getting design into conversations at a higher level and having some more influence over business and org design, which is exciting, and just giving us more of that seat at the table that everybody always talks about. So that just, I think, is elevating design at business-minded and organizational level, which is exciting.
That's great. And Reggie, just to tap into research for a little bit on that, like, have you seen? I don't know. I'll tell my little research story, and that is, you know, when I was first cutting my teeth in the world of design research, I was working for an organization. I went to the person who ran the market research group, and I said, "Hey, I need to do a research study because I've got some fundamental questions about this thing that we're designing." And his response was, "Phil, the way that market research works is just tell me what you want the conclusions to be, and I will find a way to conduct research to get to your conclusions." And I was like, that seems to me to be the opposite purpose of what I would want to do research. You know, and in all of our careers, we've experienced, you know, the stakeholder who essentially says, "We don't need to do research. Like, I understand my end user. I understand what we're trying to get to, and just follow my lead, and everything's gonna be fine. And we'll leave the researchers in the corner. They can do a little bit of usability testing at the back if we want to shut them up." So I guess my question for you more is, you know, have you seen sort of that resistance lifting up, or what have you seen going on in the research industry recently?
Well, yeah, well, I've worked in a variety of several companies, and even as a consultant at the then Electronic Inc., which is now Capgemini. I've seen how some companies have a couple of models. The first model is what you just described, research, and I think I look at market research and user experience research as they're two different spaces.
Yep.
And typically at some companies, they may go with the model of, we will, you know, come to us, tell us what you want, we will execute the work. Not as much as, okay, let's validate what you think. I don't think anybody's doing that anymore. But so that model is okay if that's sort of how you, if that's what you need, if that's what your organization needs. The model that we have in CXD inside of Vanguard is the researchers who are on my team are embedded in the product teams. So they are in daily scrums meetings. They are involved in the communication around what the product strategy is. They are helping all of their stakeholders define what the problems are that we're even going to go try to solve for. They are literally the head of research for their product team. And so it's when a decision is made about the type of research that is going to be needed, they are executing that and running it. And so at the end, everybody's in agreement and everybody understands what's going on. And it's a much more collaborative approach. Not to say that the former isn't a valid way to do it. Sometimes companies, they have a center of excellence for research, and all the business units sort of report in and say, hey, we need this, we need this. And sometimes that's just a better working model. But what happens is the researcher in that model just sort of does research, parachutes in, does the research and parachutes and then leaves. And I'm not sure if that's very fulfilling, a very fulfilling career. I've done that and it wasn't very fulfilling. I like to be in the thick of it. I want to be talking about product managers and designers on a day-to-day basis. I think that's where, in my view, I think that's where that's where the industry is going, and where I think people are able to produce better products and more innovative products because you have a diverse group of people sitting in trying to solve a problem, including UX research. And that, to me, it fosters just a whole lot more than you can get when you sort of lob something over the fence and ask someone to do it for you.
Yeah.
Great. You know what, I'm gonna try this audio thing again, see if we have someone who's asking questions about portfolios. So his name is Peter Russo. Let's see if I unmute him, if he can talk. Peter, you're on live with the panel. Can you hear it?
Hey, can you hear me all right?
Yes, that's great.
All right, nice. Yeah, so question about portfolios. I've been running a peer mentorship group, and we kind of get together and look at each other's portfolios and give feedback. And the questions have come up around like, what are hiring managers looking for in a portfolio, and what's important to show. We're wondering if people are kind of just skimming through things and looking at a high level, or want to see that detail, a little bit of both. So yeah, that's kind of the questions I'm getting back from the group.
That's great. Who hasn't spoken recently? Dan.
I have so many thoughts about this. I wrote a post called a portfolio that hiring managers can't deny. I'll paste that link in the chat too. My basic premise is that if you want to work for a company or an industry or something like that, write a love letter to that company. Like, you want to work for Apple? Write a love letter to Apple. Tell them how much you want to work there. You want to work for Nike? Write a love letter to them. Tell them how much you want to work there. I have a very a specific opinion that is not a popular opinion. I get a lot of flack for this, which is that for every company you want to apply to, make them a custom portfolio. And it doesn't have to be all tricked out and custom. Like, it could be the same shell of work, but with a couple of different flavors for each one. But, you know, if I was to apply at Nike, I would have nike.danmall.me. I would have apple.danmall.me. I would have all of those things. And I would write at the top of that, my name is Dan Mall. I love Nike. I collect sneakers. I've collected them since I was 11. I used to work at Foot Locker. I spent half my paycheck. Like, I would show them that I am a Nike enthusiast because I want them to love me because I love them. That to me is matchmaking in a portfolio. And then I think, and this is a little bit of a punt, I'll admit this, that all the rest of the portfolio needs to do is just reinforce that stuff. Where write me like, if you want to apply to Superfriendly, write me a love letter about how much you want to work for Superfriendly. Show me you've done your homework. I love this project and this project and this project. I love that you did this. Here's how I already match up to what you're doing right now. Give me 3 solid examples of how you do that. I'll call you then. Like, that's what a portfolio needs to do, is get you to the next step, which is get you to the phone call. When I used to work at Big Spaceship, which was the last agency that I worked at, I mean, we would have 100 people applying every day. So between me and the other 4 design directors, we would literally look at we'd split them up, 25 a piece. Our job was not to review portfolios. Our job was to do design work. So we would find 5 minutes in the day, literally click a link, look for 3 seconds, close, yes or no. Click another link, look for 3 seconds, yes or no. Like, so it has to make that impression. And the ones that always caught our attention were the love letters. It's always the one that was like, this is so compelling, we cannot turn this down. So anyway, lots of strong opinions about that. I'll paste my article in the chat. It outlines it a little bit more detail.
That's awesome. Yeah, that reminds me that, and I constantly remind this person, one of the most talented people at Think Company, Chad Kaufman, his portfolio, the header image of his portfolio was his UX bookcase. And all of us sat there and looked at every single book. I don't know if you know this, Abby, but everyone who was there, we were like 8 people at Think Company at that point, but we looked across every single book and I was like, this is the most solid collection of UX books to read that I've ever seen. And I still guarantee that's why he got the first interview. And he's still with us and he's probably one of our most talented people. So, but Abby, what are you looking for when you're looking at portfolios? Like, what catches your eye?
Yeah, I mean, I will say I do read cover letters. And to that point, I do think it makes sense to do some background and do some research to understand, what messaging you're putting in there. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of cursory at first glance. So it needs to look like a solid, visually put together portfolio. It doesn't have to be for a visual designer, but it needs to look clean and have clear direction in it, clear hierarchy. And then once it kind of gets past that, it needs to tell a story. So I need to understand more than just what the output is. I need to understand the thinking behind it, the decisions that were made to get there, and your process. So being able to visualize that is very important to get to the next step.
Great. Anything to add, Kathleen?
Yeah, the people have pretty much covered it, but and also some results. So yeah, I want to see your thinking, your process, and how you do it. But what happened to this thing? Sometimes the story's not so great, and it's not always the designer's fault. Maybe the product ran out of budget and it tanked or whatever. But I'd love to see the result of it. And often if you've done it, hopefully you have a link to something public facing. That's always the best. And throw in some business results, because we tend to forget, like, our great work should be leading to better business results. And you can take credit for that. You really can. Like, when I was at Fidelity, my team redesigned the planning guidance center that customers use to come up with their financial plans. And the revenues went through the ceiling when we redid that, because people, once they have a plan and they see those numbers, it becomes real, and they start, investing money differently and bringing money into Fidelity. And, so it was a direct correlation. It was so, take credit for it. So I think sometimes designers are a little shy to do that. Like, well, I'm not really a sales rep, and there were other people involved. And it's like, sure, but your work was supporting some of that revenue. So go ahead and put it in there. It gets people's attention when you see that.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I want folks to know that even if in the world of UX research, having a portfolio can also give you a leg up as well. I can't tell you how many interviews I've sat through, and I'll never forget, this was years ago, when after having a couple, like 3 or 4 folks come through the interview process, I was just kind of like, oh, okay, another interview. And I had never seen it before. This was early in my career as a manager. Someone came in to interview for the role that I had open. And the first thing she says, I have a presentation for you. And this was, we didn't really have a formal process at that point. But let me tell you, she busted out the computer, her laptop, and said, okay, Reggie, and that's why I love your analogy, Dan, of just, she made me love her work. And she was set up, she had all of her case studies, and to your point, Kathleen, she talked about the line of sight from what she learned all the way to the business result. She had charts, graphs, what she did, pictures of her out in the field doing ethnography. I was like, sold.
Instant hire.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I'm still excited about it.
Yeah, there you go. Where is she? I want to hire her now.
I feel like we all have those just classic stories of interviews gone great, where someone comes in. We once at Think Company interviewed someone who had a degree in he was a trained musical conductor, and had been working as a designer for only a year. And the hiring manager at that point and I were both like, yeah, we kind of want to just see what a musical conductor's trying to do in design. And he came in and he aced his presentation to us. And the way he aced it was, he played a video behind him and he spoke, and as he was hitting certain points in his talk, the video was changing and different things were happening behind him. And at the end I said, how did you do that? Like, how many times did you rehearse this to get all those points right? And he said, I have a metronome ticking in my head at all times. I was a conductor at one point. Like, it's not hard if you've conducted an orchestra, like. And we hired him, and now he's actually a design researcher over at LinkedIn now. They stole him away from us, but so he was a great guy, and he sort of aced that process too. All right, let's see what other I'm going to see if Jeff wants to unmute and ask his question about books, materials, and websites. I think we talked a little bit about it, but maybe he's got more for his question. Jeff, I think you're live.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I've actually I've gone into the academic realm of teaching design. I teach, intro level graphic design and UX design. So I'm always on the lookout for books, materials, websites to keep myself and my students up to date on the latest trends. And I was just wondering, what types of things do you guys use to stay up to date?
Great. Maybe if each of us has one recommendation, I'll start. I'm just going to go clockwise around my screen. So I'm going to start with Kathleen.
Okay. Oh, only get one. Darn it. Okay. I'll go
as much as you could fit until I shut you up.
Okay. Oldie but goodie. Jared Spool's posts are always great. They're always a little provocative. He's very practical, and you can kind of go further from his posts and do more research. His topics are usually really right on point for what's going on in the world. Great place to start.
I'm sorry, could you repeat his name?
Jared, G-A-R-E-D, Spool, S-P-O-O-L. Does he have an E?
Michelle just put it in the chat, so
you'll find it. Yep. UIE is his, User Interface Engineering is his company, UIE.
Yep. All right, I go clockwise. Abby, you're next.
There are so many.
Actually,
I know. I listen to a ton of podcasts. So, I mean, I think there's a ton of good design podcasts out there. I know Envision does a lot with their work. And even they have some resources online. Designbetter.co, I believe, is a good one. And they cover some details pretty in depth.
Awesome. Dan.
So difficult. I'm gonna recommend no existing resources, and instead for entry-level designers, just design something every day. Like, you'll get better, you'll get really good doing that than you will like reading magazines and reading websites and stuff like that.
Great. Reggie.
Love that answer, Dan. I'm going to shamelessly plug a sort of a content aggregator that I have. It's called Human Centered World. And if you go to my LinkedIn and go to, you'll see a bunch of posts. The aggregator posts an article every day, but if you go to the actual website, it has a bunch of articles, resources, and it's geared to share information about how the world designs for people. So if you go to that, you'll see a number of different sources that might interest you. It's called Human Centered World. You can Google it and it'll come up, I think. Just my name, Reggie Murphy, Human Centered World.
Great, great. I'll throw one in there that is a resource that I go to occasionally, although they haven't been keeping it up all that well recently. InVision did something they called the Design Genome Project, which was really the goal of it was to look into how design work gets done in different organizations. So it's more of like if you are a manager or a leader of design in large organizations, to really understand how some different organizations are executing on design, because we all have different organizational structures. We have different ways that work gets done, ways that we're managing our design systems and everything. So it was an interesting study that they did for a while. I was kind of hoping that they would keep it up on a regular basis and people would contribute to it, but it seems like it's kind of gone dark a little bit, but it's still a good archive and a resource for that kind of information.
Bill, we designed and built that with InVision. Thank you for the plug. I'll send you a royalty check in the mail.
I didn't realize you built that for them. Really? Yeah. Nice.
Great.
That's great. Awesome. Okay, so that's Jeff's question. So let me mute Jeff again and go to the next question. There's a question here which maybe people can answer in the chat, and I'm gonna it's from Martha, but it's around, are there any design opportunities for design internships or remote internships? So if anybody has an answer to that, they can put it over in the chat. The next question is from Maria. So let me see if I can find Maria, and it's about tips for soon-to-be graduates. So Maria, you are unmuted.
Hey everyone.
Hello.
I am actually one of the students right now, so I'm graduating in 6 weeks as an interactive digital media student from Drexel, and I want to pursue a remote career. That seems to be more of a possibility now more than ever, but it still seems to me as a not common path, and I'm just looking for some tips on how to do that, especially from the lack of experience since I'm a recent graduate.
Does anyone want to pick that up? Just getting started. Yeah, great. Thanks, Dan.
Because it's a gimme. Hi, Mel. You all should hire Mel if somebody's looking for somebody good. Mel's great. In terms of mentorship, there's a great article by Bryn Jackson where he talks about the different kinds of mentorship. And one of the things that I learned from that article that really stuck with me is the idea of indirect mentorship, which is the idea that people can be mentors to you without them even knowing it. And I love that idea. It's basically like curating your own mentorship. And so he gives some tips on like how you can essentially make someone your mentor, sometimes without them even knowing it, by reading their stuff, by listening to what they do, by observing what they're doing. So I'll post that article in the chat. But like, I like the idea of indirect mentorship because it opens the door to, it doesn't have to be a one-on-one hands-on mentorship. It can be you kind of absorbing that from someone else if you're just intentional about it.
That's great. And by the way, I just looked at the clock and realized that we're at time. So I was gonna hit a couple of other questions, but maybe there's some way that we can archive these questions and see if we can contribute some answers offline for this. I know that we're supposed to hand it off back to I think PhillyCHI for the results of the raffle. So
you can get, I think you can get one more question answered. I think it's
okay.
Real good in there.
Okay, well, and I'll consolidate two questions, and maybe we can go around Robin again and talk about this. There are two questions about onboarding, so I won't unmute folks to do this. But you know, how are folks onboarding people as new team members? and how maybe has that changed in the world of COVID. So I'm going to continue with my clockwise process, but I'm going to start with Reggie since he's after Dan.
Let's see. We have, yeah, all of our orientation onboarding is all virtual. That's pretty much what we've been doing. Obviously, we'd like to do it in person, but we're just using all of the digital and virtual tools at our disposal to try to make it as in person as possible. And we've been pretty successful. We've onboarded now a couple of classes of folks since COVID started, and the feedback has been pretty positive. We're recording different modules for the orientation and letting the the new crew members, we call them crew members at Vanguard, watch them asynchronous offline or whenever. And that helps the process, so you don't have to always be live for the entire orientation process. So just if you get hired, just know that, yeah, you just have to, give the company that hired you some grace. Some things aren't going to work very well. These are technically just going to fall through the cracks. But if, I think in this moment, just be patient, and if you really are, and you'll be able to get the information that you need from your orientation process.
Great. Kathleen, how have you been handling it?
Yeah, it was rough at first because we didn't have a way for people to get their computers. I mean, just simple thing like that, because like we just assumed you came in the office and picked up your computer, and it was like, so once we have some great people who specialize in this, they got their act together and figured out ways to ship computers fast and get them to people. And then we had in the interim, we had people using their personal computers just to access the system and set things up. So we had to very quickly move to get people what they needed to get going, but it was a little rough. But the good thing is now we have new processes in place and we figured it out. So when we have a case of a snowstorm or whatever, somebody is working remote, then we can do this without having to have someone get on a plane and fly to Philadelphia. So it's great.
That's great. Abby, I know we've onboarded a few people. What has changed in our processes, or what does it look like now for folks?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's terribly different, honestly. It's just that we're doing a lot of the meetings that we would have in person through Zoom. We do a lot of shadowing in the beginning, so getting people into even client-facing meetings with other project teams to have an understanding of how our team members run meetings and how they interact with people. We always had an asynchronous checklist that people will go through. So I actually don't feel like it's terribly different. It's just being more directive about how people are meeting each other through virtual coffees and things like that.
Great. Dan, last word on onboarding. What's going on over at Superfriendly?
Similar to Reggie and Kathleen, I would say it is one of our biggest holes, is that we have never done a good job of that. So I like how Reggie said it. Like, one of the things that we do is we ask for a lot of forgiveness and a lot of grace, for people who are new. And then some things that we're starting to figure out is that when we onboard someone, we introduce them to their team and we tell the team why we've chosen them. We say, we've chosen Abby because her superpowers are, for example, attention to detail and she has the ability to oversee multiple projects at the same time. So we sort of introduce them by their superpowers, and then also kind of say, this is how we expect this person to relate to the rest of the team and vice versa. So what is that person's support system? We try to tell that person in front of everybody so that the expectations are clear. This person you're going to have one-on-ones with, this person will be there to answer these kinds of questions, and this person will be there to answer these kinds of questions. So we don't really have much more figured out than that. So what we try to do is say, like, we know it's going to be rough, but here is what your support system looks like. Please give us some forgiveness that we don't have this all figured out.
That's great. Well, and on that note, first I want to thank everyone all the participants who have stuck around. We peaked at 106 and we're at 95, so I guess we did something right. That everyone stuck around after 8 o'clock. Thank you all for making this just such a great and interesting conversation. I hope that for the people who are listening in, that they were able to understand there's a wide range of responses to all these kinds of questions. All different kinds of organizations function differently, but you were really talking to some of the best folks, at least in the Philadelphia area, that are really looking for talent, have done a great job of mentoring talent in the industry for a long time, It's been an honor just to facilitate this conversation with all of you. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. It's great.
And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Chong and PhillyCHI to close out the session and give out some free books. Thank you guys for giving us this time to chat.
Awesome, Phil. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for monitoring this awesomeness, like panelists. I really appreciate all of you guys. Dan, Kathleen, Abby, Reggie, thank you so much for doing that. I have 3 books that I can send out to. So the winner is, let me see, is you got on the list. The winner for the first book, so the UX book for Roosevelt, so one of our sponsor. Let me see. I couldn't find a name. Hold on. Okay, so the first winner is Hannah Straight Line. Hannah, I'm gonna contact you and send you the physical books to your mail. The second, I think I see her, like Hannah, I think I see you in the chat. The second one, the second books belong to Laura Turner. Thank you so much for staying until now, and I'm gonna send you to the physical books. And the third one belong to Rashmika, where are you? Here you go, I see you. So I'm gonna send you to the book. I'm gonna contact you 3 by email. Please don't ignore me. I will send you the physical books. Again, thank you so much everyone for staying along, and I will. Last and not least, stay healthy. Don't go out, okay? And share knowledge and stay connected. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you.